Hiya, it's Amanda here from Lolly Lulu Crafts, and today I'm going to be doing a video for this post instead of writing it down because I thought it would be simpler to chat it through with you rather than trying to put it pen to paper. And this video will be about adhesives. I've been asked a lot about what different adhesives are used for, what types of adhesives are out there, and kind of really what my favourites are. Now obviously on the last one that is personal choice, and within each kind of category there will be many different brands and different favourites, but these are my personal favourites. Having used lots of different ones, these are the ones that I've come down to as the ones that I would use and do use a lot. So hopefully this answers a lot of questions, and if not, do feel free to ask me a question in the message me box. Okay, so starting off with our tape adhesives, and I'm not going in any particular order, however I would probably say that your tape adhesive is probably the most popular used type of adhesive, and you will find that there is a tape adhesive for most jobs that you want to do within paper craft. So we've got here our ATG gun, which is a great adhesive, very strong bond. You can get them with different widths. This one is your 1/4 inch width, which is probably the best size for paper craft. Your slightly bigger one, this I think is the smallest, but the slightly bigger width is probably, for most things that we do, a little bit too wide. I think it's like a 1/2 inch wide tape. The refills are not cheap, but they do last a long time, so it's a balance between kind of the cost of it, but it may be that in the end it works out the same if not cheaper because of the length of time that it lasts. Then you've got your little tape pen. Now there's all sorts of those. This particular one is a Create and Craft one, but there's loads and loads of these. This particular one is not refillable, but you can get ones that are refillable. This is just a disposable one, and it is not a permanent adhesive, it's a repositionable adhesive, and that's something you want to check when you're buying adhesives, particularly tape. You want to check whether it's repositionable or permanent, and depending on your job that you're doing you may want one or other, so you just need to make sure. I know you might think with the paper craft that we want something that's got a permanent adhesion, but even the repositionable, after a certain amount of time it becomes permanent, so it's not an issue. It just gives you a little bit of movement at the beginning. That said, it's not the strongest adhesive, so for your heavier card, etc., I would suggest that it's great for paper, but for your heavier card not as good. You might want to go for one of the others. If you watch me regularly you will see when I change and chop with these. Okay, so then we've got our regular tape on a reel adhesive. Another really great one. This particular one is what they call easy peel, because they put the adhesives, there's a slight edge of where it's not sticky. I don't know if you'll catch that on there. There's a little edge where there's no adhesive, so it means it's easier for you to peel up when you stick it down, if you remember which edge it is. Stronger than your tape pens. I think this is a permanent adhesive, but again I think they come in both forms, so you can choose which you prefer. I would say that this is stronger than your tape pen, and again if you watch me regularly you will see sometimes that I will opt for this for my slightly heavier cardstock, heavier cardstock or heavier paper instead of my tape pen. Probably not as strong adhesive as an adhesive in your ATG, which is a really good strong adhesive. So again, all of these tape adhesives I would be using for sticking my cards together, so one pay of matting and layering, sticking my toppers down, but it's all for flat adhesion. There's going to be no height on these, they're going to be completely flat. So as I say, sticking your paper down, matting it up, sticking bits of toppers down. You can even use this sort of thing if you're careful with it. You could probably just put little dobs of it to stick your flowers down even. I personally probably wouldn't choose that unless I sort of didn't have anything else to hand, but it does work. So those sort of work well for that, I would say. So then you've got your red tape adhesive, and this is probably one of the strongest tapes that you've got. In fact, probably one of your strongest adhesives that you've got. that's non-wet glue. It is incredibly strong. Great if you're making boxes, putting maybe a card together like you've seen me do when I've made a card base. So I would suggest that you don't need it for very much stuff in card making in itself. You might want it for envelopes, for boxes, etc., things like that, but general kind of sticking paper to paper, etc., it's too strong and you'll be wasting your money because it's not cheap to buy. But it's definitely one of those that you should have in your stash, but you just don't need to use it a lot, I would suggest, unless you're making lots of boxes and things. So. Okay, now the last one in the tape adhesive section that I've got anyway is this foam tape. Now you can get foams in little blocks as well, and you can get them in like little squares, you know, that come on a sheet. This to me, I prefer. I like it on the tape because it gives me the option to, this is quite a thin one, but it gives me the option to have a long strip. It gives me the option to use it for shaker cards, and I just find it goes a lot further. I can't stand those tiny little squares. They drive me absolutely mad trying to peel off all the backs. And they come in different thicknesses. You get a lot on the reel. It's really good value for money, and as I say, it's much easier to use, for example. So to me, that's a must-have. But whether you have it in this form or as squares is totally up to you, but you definitely need some sort of 3D foam for working with. And your 3D foam and anything like that really is just to give a little bit of depth and height to your project. So you might have a topper or something like that that you would use, or a piece of cardstock in your matting and layering that you want to just make up a little bit higher. So anything like that you would use your foam tape or foam squares for, and it would work perfectly for that. And usually for those sorts of things you don't need a massive amount of strength. I personally, as you know, use quite a lot because I don't like the thought of the element that you've 3D'd dipping in the post or whatever, so I like to make sure there's plenty on there to make sure it stays put. But again, a lot of you that watch me regularly will know that I don't use foam as much as I would use my glue gel. That is kind of more what I would use for 3D work, but I still think it's essential to have some of this in there because, as I say, like shaker cards or whatever, very, you know, almost impossible to make without your 3D foam. Okay, so now looking at the tapes themselves, I would say these ones here are my absolute must-haves for your collection when you're starting out. Your tape pen or some sort of little tape runner like this, and your 3D foam, whether that be in a roll or whatever. The ATG you don't need. It's nice to have, and if you want to have it instead or as well as, because the tape's really good, then go for it. I mean, it's definitely a good adhesive, but it's not an absolute necessary thing when you're starting out or even later on. It is just something that's nice to have and it works really well. But as I say, you don't have to have it. The red adhesive, I would suggest you do need it. Possibly if you're a beginner, you don't need it straight away because you're unlikely to be making cards that you make your own card base for, which you'd use this for, nor are you likely to be making boxes. So possibly something you'd get into later on, but if you're more experienced, I would say that you need to have this on hand as well. Okay, so that's our tape adhesives. Okay, so now we're on to our wet adhesive, and wet adhesive is a very strong bond, as usually. You'll find that you get a much stronger bond with your wet adhesive than you do with your tape pens. I like using wet adhesive, but you do need to be cautious as to when you use it, because obviously with certain wet adhesives, if you're not careful, it can show through. So you're not going to want to use it on something that's really thin, paper or vellum or anything like that, because it's just not going to work for you. Now I've got several different ones down here, so we'll run through them with you just to explain, and I will tell you some of these you don't need, but they're just my favourites. So let's pop them over here and let's run through what we've got. So the first one that I've got is my Scotch quick dry adhesive. Now this is just a tacky PVA, so if you don't want to spend the money on buying the label Scotch because just having that name on it is a bit like buying something with the word Chanel on it. It's just going to put the price up. So any tacky PVA will do the same thing. And I've got non-branded tacky PVA and it works perfectly fine. So it's great. It sticks paper down really, really well. I find that when you put the nozzle down and you sort of put a little like this of the glue, if you're not careful, you kind of see that line coming through. So I tend to only use it on my heavier paper to cardstock, because otherwise it just doesn't really do the job. Well, it does do the job, but it just shows through, so that's no good. And I found even when it dries, you still see that line. So as I say, I only use it on the heavier stuff. But for that, it's fantastic. And also you could use it for things like sticking down little rhinestones, just using a little end of a tool and just putting little dots of it down to stick down glitter, or to stick, as I say, the rhinestones or the crystals down, or any little embellishments like that. It's fantastic for that. So that, it's a good adhesive to have, but as I say, you don't need to have the Scotch brand per se. Now this particular adhesive, the Cosmic Shimmer, you will have seen me using in the last, well, I'm hoping you will, because you guys know that watch me regularly know that a lot of my videos I have done a long time ago. So some of the videos that are coming up now have been done and filmed like a year ago, last summer. I film very much in advance, and I slot in videos, sort of more current ones, every so often, because obviously they're more relevant to a particular time and something that's been launched or whatever. So what happens is, for me, I've been using this, say, a year, but you guys might have only just seen me starting using something, so it's sometimes a bit confusing. But this glue I've been using now for quite some time, and I absolutely love it. And I've actually been using it in preference to my tacky PVA. I find that it doesn't get that lining that I was talking about, and it will stick anything to anything. It's absolutely fantastic, and I am in love with it. And that is why I went to great lengths to try and get it in my store. So I'm not saying it because it's in my store. I got it in my store because I loved it so much. And I did make a promise at the beginning of my store that everything that's in there I will have used and love, and it's stuff that I personally like. You may not have always seen me using some of that stuff, but you will know hopefully that you know, I have integrity, and I will be telling you stuff that I know that is great, and this is fabulous. It really does stick anything. And as I said, you know, even my lighter paper, obviously not vellums because you can see the glue, but even then with the vellum, it doesn't leave like a line through. It's just that you can see adhesive on vellum, but it doesn't leave that kind of scratchy mark that the other one does. And so, I mean, I just really like it, and I use it for sticking all my embellishments, or I have done using my embellishments and stuff. I mean, obviously what you'll often see is I stick my flowers down with my pin flare or whatever, and I use the pin flare to stick the gems and things down, but that's because that's in my hand at the time and it's there already out. So, you know, you can cross use these things, but I love this for, it will stick pretty much anything that you want to stick that's flat, and it's strong enough to stick down your heavy cardstock as well. I've used it for sticking to make my card bases that I talked about with the red adhesives. So again, perhaps that's another one that you might use this, because you could use this for that purpose. I've used it for boxes. As long as you paper clip your boxes together, it will stick that box together and hold it in place. So you've got one glue here that will do a lot of jobs and allow you to perhaps reduce some of the other things that you need to have. And then my next favourite, and obviously probably the most favourite thing that I use, and everybody who knows me will know, is my pin flare glue gel. I absolutely love this glue, and this is going to give you a 3D look. You can use it, it is so strong, you can use it for anything. I've literally fixed shoes with this, where the soles of my shoes come off, my favourite boots, and I stuck it back down and it worked. I thought, oh, I'll have to take it to the menders. Nah, didn't need to go, it stayed stuck. It is so strong. I had a leak on my shower and my ensuite. I fixed it. I mean, obviously eventually we changed the shower head, but in the interim it fixed it enough to be able to keep using it. Fantastic. So, I mean, apart from the fact that it's great on paper, it's great, you know, this is my desert island product. I mean, with this on my desert island, I would have the best hut out there, I tell you. It is brilliant. You'd be sticking all those leaves together to make yourself a perfect shelter. But on the side of crafting, I use it for everything, as you know. I stick my embellishments down, I stick paper down, I use it flatter, I use it as bobs to give it height. Well, if you watch me, you can't not know that I use it for everything, and this is the glue that I love. And again, I went to lengths and I managed to get it in the shop, so if you want it, I do have it in my store. And again, it was that way round. It was something that I loved, so I managed to get it into my shop because it was something that I loved, and I felt passionately that it was something that I wanted to sell to you guys. Okay, so it is in the shop. And the kit that it comes with 2 of these and a syringe. Now, I used to use the syringe, and I still do. I just forget to get it out, and I really should, because it's fantastic for the fine work that I like to do, and I really need to keep them. And I do it, and then I forget. I put the syringe away to keep it nice and clean, and then I forget to bring it with me when I do the videos. So it's great having the syringe, because you can do really, really small, delicate pieces. I mean, I know some of you have mentioned the fact that you were like holding your breath because some of the pieces that I was trying to put this on was so small, and yet it still worked. It's amazing. And the other beauty is, unlike sort of silicone glue, which is probably the closest to it, and even then it's not really, because it's much softer, but it doesn't smell. There's no smell at all. It's not strong, you don't have to have your window open or anything. It is no smell to it. So it's great in that sense. So this is a fabulous glue for sticking down pretty much anything. It does need at least 15 minutes to really sort of set up to a point where you can start sort of moving things. You know, it won't move around, but I like to leave it overnight before I sort of pack the card away. But you know, you could sort of carry on to the next section after about 15 minutes. So if you were doing layers and things, you might want to give it 15 minutes and then move on to the next bit. Okay, so that's our glue gel. And then same company, Pinflair, but they've got a photo glue, which is a very fine flat glue, and it's great for, it is designed obviously for photos, sticking photos down. But what I found was really good was that it comes with a little nozzle that you can sort of spread it out, but again, I don't really use that. But it's great for sticking stuff down that you want flat stuck. But if you have any leakages, you literally just rub it like that, and it peels away. It balls up into like a little ball, and there's no glue left. So that's a really good one. I have to say, I don't use this enough, to be honest. So it's not in my must-haves. It's just in a pile of, you know, quite nice and good. You know, I like it, but it's not one of my must-haves products. So I think in our wet adhesive pile, really the kind of must-have is obviously my Pinflair, and the other one would be my Cosmic Shimmer. So those two, I think, would cover everything you needed in the wet adhesive department, to be honest. I think the rest of them are very nice to have, but not necessary. Okay, so moving on to the next little collection. So the next thing we've got here is kind of like pen type glues. Again, nice to have these. I like these. These are my Zig glue pens. Of the two that I've got here, I like, this one isn't a Zig, I'll put that one to one side. I like this one better. It's kind of, this is by Kuretake, which if you watch me, you'll have seen my watercolour pens that I use that are like the Zig colour pens, and they're watercolour and they're really, really pretty. You might have seen the Santa Claus card. Anyway, this particular one has the nib like that, which is kind of like a marker pen nib. And all you do to get the adhesive out is just pump it down and it goes blue. And then, you know, the adhesive is in the nib, and you can literally just draw, which is great. So if you're doing like glitter and you want to do a design, or if you want to put glitter around the edge of something, I literally just run the pen around the edge of it, and then I dip the edges into the adhesive. Now what happens is with this glue is it goes blue, and while it's blue it's a temporary adhesive, and what you want to do usually is wait for it to kind of go to the clear, and then you'll put your whatever it is on it. So if you're adding some sort of glitter or some sort of embellishment, you'd use it for that. There are other things you can use, but I think that this is really helpful for that sort of thing. For, you know, you could literally write your name and then glitter it up or sparkle it up, or I mean, it's not just for glitter. If you've got a corner on a piece of paper on your matte and layer that's just lifted, you can just take this and just gently slide it underneath and dampen that corner and stick it down. So it's just a really handy glue to have, and for the price of it I think it's definitely one worth having in your collection, to be honest. Then we've got this, which is the same but it's got a different nib. Not my favourite, you have to squeeze it to get it out. I don't really like it, wouldn't recommend it personally, find it nothing but a nuisance. So I would definitely go for the other nib if I were you. And then lastly in this sort of section we've got the typical glue stick, which is the kind of glue that you would have had as a child. I really like this for things like you've got a delicate die cut that you've say is done through your spellbinders, and it's got lots of detail on it. Now that's nothing but a pain to try and put adhesive on. So if you have something like this, you turn it upside down onto another piece of paper, you can very lightly use this and just gently top, and it will cover, put a little bit of glue on all of those elements. Obviously it's going to go through onto the piece of paper behind. As long as you make sure it doesn't move, you're not going to get any of that adhesive onto the front. And then you've got adhesive on all those little bits. You can flip it over and it will stick. And it's just one of those handy glues. Again, if you've got a corner lifting, you can use it as well for just sticking down your paper. If you've got a light paper, you might just want to use that. The other thing that's really good for is if you're using 3D foam and you're not confident that you're going to get it absolutely centered, whatever it is first, if you put a bit of this on each of the little foams, on the sticky bits, you know, you've peeled off the backing, put a bit of this on, it gives you just a couple of seconds of movement time before this adhesive sets up and the sticky underneath really just sets in and sticks. So it just gives you a few seconds just to quickly move it into position. So again, I would say this one and this one are kind of must-haves adhesives. Okay, then lastly, really on the adhesives, we've got the sort of odds and bobs one, and we've got here a spray adhesive. Now this particular brand is from Hobbycraft and it's absolutely appallingly bad, frankly. Sorry Hobbycraft, but it's absolutely horrible. You can get repositionable and you can get permanent. And the one I would recommend, but I don't actually have in stock right now myself, I've run out, is Crafter's Companion. I have to say theirs is the best spray adhesive I've ever come across. You get the repositionable one, which I think it's called Spray Away, or no, I don't know. There's stick and spray and stick and stay, and anyway, you'd have to read. I can't remember the name. I know I'm pretty certain it's the purple tin anyway. So that would be the one I would recommend, not this. I wouldn't use this in a million years personally. It's absolutely awful. But the theory is the same, is that a good spray adhesive does the same thing as we said with the stick. You could use that for that sort of thing where you've got something that's got an intricate die cut and you spray the back of it, because you would be there forever trying to glue each individual element of it. So that's really handy. It's good for, again, glittering. If you wanted to glitter a big section, you could spray it and then dunk it straight into your glitter tray. I know that Crafter's Companion also do glitter sprays, so you've got that as well. Just be aware with all spray adhesives and spray anything that you need to be in a well ventilated area. I learnt the hard way that it's absolutely foul. The other one that we've got on here is our glossy accents. Now that is generally used as an accent to make something glossy, but it also can be used as an adhesive to stick something down where you want it might show a little bit, and so you need it to be totally clear. So if it does kind of show a bit, it's not going to be really obvious. So that's a good handy thing to have. And glossy accents full stop is another must-have as far as I'm concerned, because just so many things you can do with that for glossing up certain areas, and definitely worth having. The next thing I've got here is the sticky dots. Really useful little sticky dots that are, I don't know if you can even see them, but they're literally little tiny dots of adhesive which you then just pop down, or you might get a button or whatever and you stick it onto the dot. It transfers that stickiness onto the button or whatever it is, and then you can stick that down. They're surprisingly strong actually. Don't find things tend to fall off once they're on with that. And you get all different sizes. You can get tiny mini ones to much big ones like that. So again, I would suggest that's a definite must have. And then things like stickles. Not exactly a glue, but again, you could use it as a glue. Because you could have like a glittery background and stick some bits into it and it will dry. So you can use it as an adhesive. This is just one colour. There's hundreds of stickle colours, I'm sure. So that is it. Okay, so here is the pile of my sort of must-have adhesives as far as I'm concerned. The ones that I think that really, that collection there will pretty much cover most eventualities, I think. I don't think I've missed anything. If I have, please feel free to tell me. And obviously I'm not talking branding here, I'm talking about types of adhesive here. So we've got our spray adhesive, we've got our wet glue, we've got our different types of tape, our foam tape, sticky dots, glue gel, obviously, your glue pen, your glue stick and your tape pen. So you've got that whole sort of collection that covers all the different types of gluing I think that you can need in papercraft. So I hope that's helped those that were a little bit confused about the types of glue that you should use or that you might want to have in your collection, and what my favourites are and why I would use them, etc. So I hope that's helped, and if you have any questions, just pop over to the message me section and pop a question in there for me and I'd be love to answer it. Alright, thanks so much for watching and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.